Ladies and gentlemen, RosterWatch Nation, welcome back to the epic RosterWatch Podcast, brought to you by RosterWatch.com. My name is Alex Dunlap here, of course, with the Trashman. Today, we're going to be talking about the big swindles abound, Trashman. But
Wouldn't be fantasy if it didn't.
We're about 2 weeks out from the start of the 2023 NFL Draft, and some of these veterans, they've been dodging bullets. They've been hanging on by a string. They have gotten through free agency without their teams going out and getting anybody to replace them or to bite into their target share, their carry share, their touch share, any of that stuff. But we all know that the big bullet can come via the draft. So we're going to talk about the guys who we thought of five. I haven't really thought of five, but I have one situation that could involve numerous players that I'll talk about. You can talk about your guys, and after we get done with that, we'll talk about Tank Bigsby, the running back out of Auburn, how we see him stacking up. We're almost done now with our prospect breakdowns. You can find all those over at RosterWatch.com. Also, you can listen back through the podcast feed over the course of the last few months. You'll be able to hear our kind of overviews of the breakdowns, but of course the formal breakdowns all over there at RosterWatch. As Trashman forgot to reset his internet clearly before the show started. I can tell by his Trashman, can you hear me right now? Or are you frozen up? Are you good?
I mean, yeah.
Okay. All right. So we'll see how much of this we can get through. I'll just start at the beginning with me, and I just think clearly we know that mine just has to do with the running backs. Like there's going to be a running back or a set of running backs, or maybe one within a committee that's going to get completely screwed by Bijan Robinson, right? Bijan is going to be the one runner that we know is going in the first round, and the minute he goes, we think he'll go in the first round. I don't see many scenarios where he can't. And the reason why, we'll go through the teams that are picking right now, but somebody is going to get completely nuked by Bijan Robinson. And just once that happens, it's just going to be, somebody's going to be left standing when the music stops and that whole musical chairs thing, and they're not going to have a chair anymore. It's like,
well, that was the first guy that was on my list with somebody concerning the possible acquisition of Bijan Robinson.
Okay, well, so I'll tell you my thoughts on it. Okay, so let's go through the draft order. We know Carolina picks first. We don't know who they're going to pick, but we know it's going to be a quarterback, right? Houston, I think quarterback, right?
Yeah.
The number 3 pick. There's all kinds of talk about what's going to go on with Arizona in that pick.
I think they traded.
Yeah, apparently they've had like 6 suitors, but we're not looking at a running back there. Indy, of course not. Seattle, Detroit. I don't see any, Las Vegas, maybe starting it. I just don't think anybody uses a top 10 pick on a running back, but you do have Arthur Smith there in Atlanta that wants to run the heck out of the football. They've made some big moves on the defensive side of the football. Just recently, just today, trading away a 5th-round pick to Detroit for Jeffrey Okudah. That defensive backfield all of a sudden is starting to look pretty good. Like maybe they're trying to build a defense where they can just pin their ears back, hold those teams down, and what is this going to be like a down NFC South for a little bit of a while now, and just run the football. So maybe Atlanta, clearly that would screw over Tyler Algier big time, right? He's a guy who's just dodged every bullet.
I feel like it's only really bad for him if it's Bijan.
Well, I think it would be bad for him if it was Charbonnet, like another kind of big running back that can catch, and I think it'd be bad.
Yeah, maybe a Charbonnet, but I mean the thing is, they had a few backs back there. I mean, none of them that great, but he kind of rose to the top, throughout the season. So I think he's open to competition.
Who would be open to competition? Not open to competition with Bijan. Nobody wants.
Well, that's what I mean. I said everybody. I mean, like I'm saying, Bijan non-inclusive. Yeah.
But here's my thing, Trash Man. If you look at if you just think about if it's going to be 4 quarterbacks to go off the board at first, you're picking at 8. Basically, you have 4 the best 4 non-quarterback players still on the board. If you get your work done on a guy like Jalen Carter, who's from, he's there. He went to school there in the state. If you get your work done and you've been able to kind of be by campus and maybe understand that you're not worried about him, who people had as a number 1 overall prospect in the draft, coming out, like somebody like that were to fall, they're all these dudes just right at the very top that, I just don't know how you can take a running back whenever you look at what these edge guys get paid, what these defensive tackles get paid, what these corners get paid and stuff like that, and think about the replacement value of what it would cost to replace just a running back, right? It's like you're costing yourself a whole lot of money when you use a top 10 pick on a kind of guy like that. But maybe it could happen. I don't think that Philly would do it with this first pick at number 10. Right, just for the same reasons, and especially with Philly, with Rose, I cannot see Howie Roseman using a top 10 pick on a running back. So I think probably this new sort of Rashad Penny stuff is, it feels like he should be vulnerable, but maybe they're just saying, dude, we don't need to pay these running backs anything, So,
well, they think they might still get something out of Trey Sermon.
Well, I think that's their own self-swindle, right?
Yeah.
I mean, who else on the Eagles? It's so Sermon's still on the roster. We know that Boston Scott got re-upped. They still have Kenny Gainwell. They still have Rashad Penny. They're going to go to work with those guys. You forget that they took Kennedy Brooks as a college free agent last year, right? So,
well, and their best ball runner is their quarterback.
Yeah. Tennessee, no. Houston, no. They're fine with Damian Pierce and Devin Singletary. I think that's.
I think my Cowboys might take him, and if they do, I think Tony Pollard is the first guy on my list who I think would be adversely affected by that addition.
Oh yeah. Well, I mean, we've talked all about the Cow. Well, let's just continue going through the list, and we can talk about how he could get to the Cowboys, because I'm not because coming up here at 14, there's all the buzz about New England maybe being interested. That would obviously just be the death knell for Ramondre Stevenson. That would not be good for him at all. A guy who had such elite usage, right, for fantasy with what we want. But certainly a guy who we have heard that there's question marks in New England about whether or not he can hold up to the battering of a full season, kind of being the guy. Man, you bring in Bijan Robinson, that would be the perfect Patriot way type of player. It would be a swindle for him. It'd be a huge swindle for people holding out any hope for the Kevin Harrises and the Pierre Strongs and stuff.
I don't know where you could put Bijan Robinson in and not be a perfect fit.
Well, he's not going to Green Bay at 15. At 16, Washington. I begin to think I know you would hate that, trash man. But what a huge swindle to both Brian Robinson, who's, it would definitely be an indictment on what they think about Brian Robinson after getting to see him for a year after their sort of preseason love fest with him, and then the whole feel good story. The fact of the matter is he was never that good. He was never that good. It was a very nice story last year. Clearly, Antonio Gibson. We've talked about how he could be the big beneficiary of a Eric Bieniemy offense. That's what some of the insiders have said about the Commanders and how they sort of see that situation. But that would get that whole narrative felt thin to me to begin with, based on how much they sort of hated him before. And also, it would get blown to absolute smithereens if Bijan goes there. That's one to really watch out for. I don't think either of those guys have terrific value right now. Do you think 18 Detroit, they know that Jamal Williams is gone? They did sign David Montgomery for the next couple of years.
Yeah, I don't see David Montgomery and Swift being there and then adding.
But Swift's only going to be there for one more year.
Yeah, it's still, I feel like and they're paying David Montgomery quite a bit. I don't see them.
Seattle at 20, no way. They just used a lot of draft capital on Kenneth Walker, who's his own sick player. What about 21, the Chargers? What if they can't? it doesn't really swindle anybody. But if Eckler somehow does
Swindlers
get out of
everywhere.
there, if Eckler somehow gets
Eckler
out of
stops
there,
being a goal line back.
what?
I said Eckler stops being the goal line back if Bijan's there.
I don't know. Bijan might get a little bit swindled if he has to go to place with it. With Eckler's a great goal line back for. He's a great goal line back. Despite I was gonna say he's a great for his size, but he's a great goal line back despite his size. You know what I mean? He's just. I don't even say it's for his size because that means it's like, he's good, but only for his size. He's like,
I just don't see a team bringing Bijan Robinson in as a complimentary back.
Baltimore doesn't seem like it makes any sense. Would Minnesota make any sense? That would nuke Alexander Mattison because the only way it would be Minnesota is if they do get rid of Dalvin somehow, right? Then all of a sudden Alexander Mattison is just back to being Alexander Mattison.
Right. That'd be a perfect fit for Bijan.
And then we're starting to get into this stuff where it's like it's not going to be Jacksonville. They have ETN. That's not going to be how they certainly not going to be how they build based on what we've seen out of them in the first, I guess, in the first year post Urban Meyer. And then Giants, no way, they're paying Saquon. Then you get to 26 at Dallas. And that's what we talk about, right? We live here in Texas. I'm not in Austin. I'm close. I'm in Central Texas.
You might as well be.
I'm in Central Texas. I'm not in the city of Austin. Trashman's right in the heart of the city of Austin.
It's like living in a suburb of Houston. You're in Austin.
It's an hour to get in. It's an hour. Dude, it took me an hour this morning to get down to Ben White. So that's how long it takes.
That's just terrible traffic.
Well, there's that too. If you haven't heard, there's been a lot of people moving here. If you haven't heard,
waiting for the summer to drive some of them out.
Yeah, man. And it will. My neighbors that moved here from California, it's so funny. Like he says, I'm just here to live here 51% of the time. He's like, gives you a wink. But dude, he's never here for the summer. He just he comes back around September 15th. He's like, hey man, how was summer around here? Like, oh, it sucked. But dude, people don't understand that Texas would be like as far as the GDP of Texas, if it were its own country, it'd be like what do they say? Like ninth biggest in the world. I mean, Texas is bigger than France. A lot of money here UT has the biggest endowment of any school in the country. Texas is obviously one of the most iconic brands. The Dallas Cowboys are America's team.
I mean, they're the most valuable, at least NFL franchise.
I can't really state enough how much people in Texas love Bijan Robinson. Even if you're like an Aggie who hates the Texas Longhorns, you can't help but not love Bijan Robinson. If you're just, he's such a nice guy, the kind of guy that everybody loves. That's going to be the best selling jersey in the whole NFL. Jerry would absolutely do it.
He would.
He would absolutely do it if he's there at 26. So I think that the only thing that would happen if anybody else wanted him, like let's say Cincy wants to get rid of Mixon or something like that, and they wanted to come up and get like this. I think somebody would have to come up and get him. Somebody would have to come up and get him. And so I think for me, the most likely spots for Bijan Robinson, outside shot, far outside. I can't see Atlanta. Just like I said, based on the fact if it peels off four running backs, there's going to be two good, two valuable spots that are there with a top 4 non-QB in this draft. I don't think it can be. I don't think Philly's going to do it. I think that the biggest, most vulnerable guys with Bijan are New England, 14, Ramondre Stevenson, 16, Antonio Gibson, Brian Robinson to Washington. And then if not Dallas, where it's Tony Pollard, somebody jumping up to get him team to be named. But how much would Tony Pollard fall down the best ball rankings for you, Trashman, if Bijan went there? Because right now we have him as running back 7. Would that we have him ahead of Nick Chubb, Josh Jacobs, Ken Walker.
I'd put him right around where he was before Zeke left the team.
So where would that be then? Would it be by like underneath Breece Hall and ETN?
Probably right there, yeah.
But above,
because you have to think too, McCarthy wants to go back to being a ball running team.
McCarthy's going to get his ass fired.
Likely, it's very likely, but yeah, he wants to go back to running the ball and being a run first team. And so I think that even if Bijan came, Pollard would still get lots of usage, as he did whenever Elliott, was playing well.
All right, so Pollard was your number one guy. Mine was just a situation where I discussed a few different guys. So let's hear your other guys who could be getting swindled here. These vulnerable veterans that people might need to keep a close eye on and maybe think about contingency situations regarding should they not be able to dodge these bullets in the draft.
I mean, Robert Woods is an obvious one to me.
He has no fantasy value anyway.
But you know what I'm saying?
What? Because the Texans are going to take a wide receiver?
Probably.
I mean, so you should say Nico Collins.
Well, I was going to say Nico Collins, but you were talking about veterans, and I think of Robert Woods as more of a veteran than
No,
Nico Collins.
I just mean veterans as dudes. Like that can be second year. Veterans are guys who are not rookies. Are all the guys who you pick crusty old veterans like this?
I mean, Robert Woods, he's more of a known commodity than Nico Collins.
Yeah, but Nico Collins has a higher ADP.
I mean, yeah, it's fine. Either one of those guys is going to
John
be
Mechie has a higher ADP.
Is stymied by
nobody's out here drafting Robert Woods. Like nobody.
Somebody would
draft after
Robert
last
Woods.
year in Tennessee. Nobody is.
That's yet to be seen.
Who else?
Anyway, Odell Beckham, I think.
Well, we didn't talk about Odell Beckham as a Baltimore Raven. What do you think about this?
I mean, I don't know. I don't know if he's better than Rashad Bateman at this point in his career.
He's getting paid $15 million with $18 million. That's such an un-Ravens like thing to go out and do that. It's like they're trying to show their fan base that they still care, even though all this weird.
Well, they're trying to keep Lamar Jackson there.
Oh yeah, so we're not going to pay you, but let's go ahead and give Odell Beckham $18 million. Are you kidding? Odell Beckham hadn't played in 2 years. He didn't play last season.
No.
And last time we saw him playing, he was like
right?
He was a mercenary going to play for. I mean, and he was okay for the Rams, but dude, It's like it's too much money. They're paying like. How can Odell Beckham be worth $15 million? I would think he would get a deal $8 to $10 million.
And getting butts in the seats.
Is Odell Beckham really going to get butts in the seats on a low passing volume offense like this?
I think so. I mean, it's not too far from New York. I think the fact that they give him $15 million, they're giving $15 million just to have a total wildfire up their ass to go out and get somebody that's going to make him redundant or irrelevant over the course of the next year. I mean, perhaps. I mean, where they have Rashad Bateman, they have him. I guess Devin Duvernay. I think it's well within the realm of possibilities that they add another wide receiver.
Okay. Well, I mean, that would hurt Odell Beckham, I guess. But it probably wouldn't, considering the luck that they've had with these wide receivers that they've drafted recently. You'd think that between Tylan Wallace and Prochet, and even Rashad Bateman hasn't really hit yet.
Right.
Duvernay, all these guys. Boykin. Who else?
I think Drake London
could get swindled by the draft.
Potentially.
So, okay.
I mean, it was hard enough. It was hard enough for him to get his when he was the only viable wide receiver in that receiving core.
Atlanta picks at 8. They pick again at 44 in the second round. And then in the third round, they only have one pick there at 75. So kind of depending on the flavor of wide receiver that they'd be interested in. let's see, what have they done? They've gone out and they've gone out and they've gotten scrubs.
Scrub
They've got
receivers.
they went
That
out. They
makes
went.
me think too that they're going to add somebody in the draft.
They went out. They got. I mean, their big splash additions have been Mac Hollins and Scotty Miller. So
yeah, they have to add somebody in the draft, and I feel like that's part of their game plan.
Yeah, and you know what? It's kind of counterintuitive to say that Drake London could be swindled, but the fact of the matter is, you look at Drake London with like what, a 34% target share last year, and he wasn't able to even do that much on that.
Well,
right?
Yeah, that's what I'm saying.
We talk about how the efficiency stuff, the efficiency statistics that we have to use just to normalize that don't necessarily always equate to the production, because sometimes these situations are just so low volume, that 33% of, whatever, 18 pass attempts, it's just not going to be enough to get by. Right. So anything where you dig into that, or you bite into that bite into that pie, is going to be something that, it's like Matt Kelly always calls it, man, the law of the conservation of targets. If they do bring in somebody that has day 2 draft capital, it won't be day 1 draft capital. They're not taking a wide receiver at 8. Right.
That's fair.
But a day 2 draft capital guy, I mean, it could be.
I could see them adding maybe a Rice.
Yeah, or no, I mean, they like, yeah, or what if it was like, what if round 2, some kind of round 2, like Marvin Mims or Jalen Hyatt or Jaden Reed, Michael Wilson, or what?
I think Michael Wilson would probably be a good fit there.
What about Jonathan Mingo? I mean, we haven't really re-upped our expectations for Jonathan Mingo after what he was able to do at the run that 4.46 at the combine.
Yeah.
Like that was,
well, he had a good Senior Bowl too.
Yeah.
I remember him popping a little bit.
Yeah. Well, I mean, Drake London, I wasn't expecting to hear you say that. Were there any others that you had?
Yes. Rachaad White.
Oh yeah. Yeah. I mean, he could get swindled bad. Let's see. Tampa Bay, they pick at 19. They pick again and then so that's their first round pick. That could be a sneaky weird first round spot for Bijan too. I don't know why I just skipped over that.
Yeah.
It wasn't like they were totally in love with Rachaad White last year. And I know they've given the lip service of the 3 down back and stuff this year. I think that would be more something at like pick 50. They have pick 82. So they do have 2 picks there through day 2 of the draft. They don't have a 4th round pick. They do. Looks like they have in the 5th. They have 2 in the 5th. They have 3 in the 6th and 1 in the 7th. So maybe looking at guys like what, maybe they could, I mean, like I think a Roschon Johnson or somebody like that, a Kendre Miller, if they fell to the 3rd round, like somebody, Tank Bigsby, who we're going to talk about.
I think maybe would be a decent fit there.
What about if Charbonnet fell to round 2? I mean, I said that he reminds me of a mix, kind of a Rachaad White, David Montgomery.
Yeah, that would render White pretty much obsolete. A big guy who can also catch the ball.
Yeah. So I agree, man. Like, everybody's taking the Rachaad White victory laps right now because everybody's just penciling him in to be the featured, runner and the 3 down back with the good receiving profile that we all love from college, the good Senior Bowl. But it's kind of like, be careful what you wish for sometimes when there's really nobody else there to compete, when they feel like they really got to buttress that room. You could bring in somebody, you could bring in somebody that could be a lot more dangerous than one of these, maybe one of these crappy veterans that you would just like to have as protection against that.
Yeah.
All right. Do you want to talk about Tank, or do you have anything else?
I mean, I have some other guys we can talk about, but if you want to go to Tank, we can do that.
Well, why don't you just list off your other guys and I'll just tell you what I think.
I was saying Marquise Brown.
Yeah, well, he's swindled as it is. Vegas has the Cardinals as the team to win the fewest games next season. That whole thing's in disarray.
Yeah, definitely. I mean, I just see it as a rebuilding team, but it seems like an opportunity to add some firepower in the receiving core. For sure. It seems like a move that they would make.
Anyone else?
I had one more. I said Juju.
Yeah.
In New England.
Because we said 14 could be Bijan. It could be just as easily be Jackson Smith and Jigba.
Yeah.
And then Juju.
And he's the kind of player that Belichick would love.
Yep. And then Juju's just nuked because you're gonna have to move him outside. He's not gonna play in the slot, and you're just like, you have moved Juju outside. All of a sudden we're back to these post 2017 talks we were having about what happens when he moves outside, what happens whenever AB's not there. You know what I mean? It's like all of a sudden it's in flux. It isn't. You're not exactly sure how Juju's going to be used or how to sort of gauge that. All right, let's talk about Tank Bigsby. I like Tank Bigsby. I'll be interested to hear what you think about him, but I was able to watch a good bit of him, a bunch of games from throughout his career. 5'11.5", 210 pounds, 9.25-inch hands, 32-inch arms. He is an early enrollee, or he is not an early enrollee. What do they call? He's an early declare, but will be 22 at some point during this season. We have his 40-yard dash at 4.5. That's adjusted from a 4.45 that he ran at Pro Day. Even though he ran a 4.56 at the combine, we're giving him credit for the time adjusted or the Pro Day adjusted 4.45. We're going to chalk it up to a 4.5, and he's just fast enough, really, Trashman, to truly be like an occasional home run hitter. You can see him like he can get past the defense. He can run by the defense. It's not just every time where he's shot out of a rocket and he's just going to absolutely kill you, but just fast enough. He's got the feature back size and speed. He is a major asset in the receiving game. It looks like what?
He's a major asset in the receiving game.
Yeah, as far as he had as far as this year's class of guys who were. I mean, he caught 30 balls last year. Am I wrong about that?
I mean, but how successful was he with him?
Let's see. He had the second largest target share. If that 30 is correct, it got pulled into my sheet. That's the second highest target share of any running back. That's an absurd 19% target share.
Is that right?
That's the biggest of any. But we can go and look. I mean, like I said, that was pulled in. That was not put in manually by me, but it was pulled in, and I haven't had issues with it. Let's see. Yeah, he had 30 receptions last year, Trashman. For 180 yards.
Yeah.
So, that's a lot of receiving volume. That's a lot of targets, dude.
A lot of targets, but he didn't necessarily do much with them.
But still, a guy that has a 19% market share of his team's receptions, it's like that's really good. It's the only one thing about Tank. It's the only real thing that he broke out. Like he came in at gangbusters, right? As a true freshman. The receiving stuff, the only thing you really see tick up.
Receiver for him really came into his last season. He really wasn't used as a receiver until
right. That's the one thing that where you see the big difference. It's kind of Charbonnet-like with that, but he's not when I say he's a major weapon, I don't mean like a Charbonnet weapon. Charbonnet's a really good catcher of the football. He's really.
I don't see Bigsby as much of an asset in the receiving game. I mean, as far as like doing much damage in the receiving game, maybe he caught a lot of balls. I didn't see him being very productive with it.
I mean, there are things to complain about with him for sure. But look, as far as his just background, he was his last 2 seasons in college, he was SEC academic honor roll. His lateral agility, we don't have any testing to prove this. He didn't have a short shuttle or a 3-cone at the combine.
That was one of the things I noticed in his film.
Or his Pro Day. You think it's good, right?
Yeah.
It's good. His offensive line plays really bad, but he's elusive regardless of it. I saw that in PFF he was second in the SEC in yards after contact last year with 740. He was fourth in forced missed tackles at 61. He was third in missed tackles forced per attempt at 0.34. And
it's surprising to me. It seems like he's always bouncing the ball to the outside.
He does. Like he certainly does. Like that's one thing about him. He if things fall just right, and he can get to that edge and get upfield, like he can run away from you, but he does kind of go out to the corner pretty often, right? He's not one of these slashing type of runners who's gonna plant their foot, just get upfield with some anger and some bad intentions. He has been like the linchpin of the offense the whole time, and he really hasn't. He's had bad offensive line play, but he really hasn't been injured much. He's played the whole time. He hasn't had any big injuries. I think his, people say like his last major injury was he broke his leg in 8th grade or something like that. Probably, I don't know, playing on the swings or something like that. I don't know. Probably, I don't know what you do in 8th grade. My main concerns with him is
that's the last time I broke something.
Yeah. My main concern with him is he had some fumbling issues, not this last year. I think in 2021. That was something
he had four fumbles in 2021, I think.
I forgot where I think I was looking at Lance Zierlein's write-up on him just to see what Lance had said, and he had mentioned that. I went back and looked it up. It looks like that's the 4 fumbles in 2021. Like I mentioned, I just noticed watching I don't see much of a difference in him from his freshman to his junior year. I don't see much difference. And then there's the stuff about just his pad level. He runs like Wayne.
He's a high runner.
Oh, like a really high one. He's not like some of these other guys that we say runs with an upright style. It's a definite feature of his game. So much so that like my first guy that popped into my head for a comp for him was Wayne Gallman. Okay. And I don't know if Gallman is exactly the best comp that you want to have. From just a size perspective, from the perspective of the way that he was used volume-wise in the passing game, I think he has some traits that are similar to Isaiah Spiller. I'm not sure if you can see those at all. And then one that was just on Mock Draftable that I thought was good when they compared their measurables from the combine was Keyshawn Vaughn. And I think the Keyshawn Vaughn, Tank Bigsby, different running style. Yeah. But if you have some kind of Franken comp between a Wayne Gallman, Isaiah Spiller.
Wayne Gallman's probably the most apt one.
So I'm getting the vibe from you that you don't like Tank Bigsby.
Well, for me, it's like I don't think he's that much of an asset, or I don't think he's a natural pass catcher. Maybe he got a lot of passes, but like that being said, and I'm also bouncing it outside. I don't see him being a between the tackles kind of guy necessarily. So I'm not really sure what you do with a guy like him. A bigger guy who, isn't a between the tackles runner, but isn't necessarily the most natural pass catcher. So but he's got some explosive. He's explosive. He's got good lateral agility. I see him as a complimentary back, though.
Was it weird that maybe one of the guys I thought about when I saw him was Devin Singletary in college?
I mean, he's at least 4 inches taller than Devin Singletary, and
yeah, but just like just kind of the shiftiness.
They kind of run similarly.
Yeah, I think that's a good. I think that's kind of where we are with him. Wayne Gallman, Singletary, Spiller, Keyshawn Vaughn, and look, the jury's still out with a guy like Isaiah Spiller. I think that's a pretty good comp from just a size, speed, usage kind of thing. The only thing about Spiller was the scouts loved him so much is because in the Jimbo Fisher offense, you run those actual kind of pro style NFL routes that the scouts love, right?
Yeah.
You're not going to get that out of Tank Bigsby. You're going to get him catching balls out of the backfield on screens and little dump offs and things like that, simply because Auburn's kind of been a mess, right? And they didn't have a good offensive line, and they got to get these guys going as an extension of the run game any way that they possibly can. So with that being said, are you going to have Tank Bigsby ranked over or under Israel Abanikanda?
I have him behind Israel in my mind right now.
What about Tyjae Spears?
I have him behind him too.
What about really behind him too? Golly, you all this. All right, so what about A-Chain?
I mean, I feel like Bigsby probably makes a better I think teams probably look at Bigsby as more of an NFL back You know,
you're gonna do you know what, Trash Man? After all this, after all your Devon A. Chain stuff, dude, you're gonna end up too low on him.
Well,
if you
then
keep on worried about how
I like A.J. Moore as a prospect. I'm just, I'm thinking about what teams will do with him.
All right, let me ask you this: Tank Bigsby or Eric Gray, with his 4.6, with his pro day adjusted 4.6, 4.68 40 time.
Bigsby.